infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. If you're new around these parts, consider heading to your podcatcher of choice and rating and reviewing the show. That helps us aggregate to new earlobes, which means more stories for you to enjoy. Home base for ITF is intothefrayradio.com. There you can find blog posts, all episodes, purchase stickers, signed books, and get Patreon info. Speaking of Patreon, the latest episodes up include The Hitchhiker, in which Tina and Laura of Free Will Healing stick around to discuss extremely odd and honestly nefarious happenings at their office, and this is just since the very first time that we spoke, so this is all extremely recent. Also, the video interview with author and researcher Carol Scott, where we discuss the cryptids of Asia and Oceania. Also, live video chat with the patrons, The World's Most Haunted Part 2, which means there is a Part 1. Yep. Another live video chat was Walking with the Wild Man, where I welcomed on the Irish Bigfoot Research Organization. They covered sightings reported to them, cases they've looked at, and their own personal sightings over yonder, yes. So that's a few of the most recent episodes, but plenty more where that came from is already available to you on Patreon. And I just added new merch, brand new t-shirts and mugs to the alpha and cross-country alpha levels, and more of that type of stuff to come. Okay, new patrons over at patreon.com/intothefray. You knew it was coming. Kip Morrill, Ed Gleesta, Path of Chaos, David Griffith, Red Nads, Stephen Mundy, Stephen Carson, Riley Rices, Don King, Stephen Stockdale, Gothic Samich, M. Murphy, David Glassford, Lucky Stars, Jesse Walker, Vanguard 117, Tina Mason, Melissa Burkhart, Sarah Dural, Lauren Smart, Ashley Smart, Tracy Hartman, Andrea Estenson, Autumn Burpee, Bayri Chan, James Holman, and Christoph S. So, if you're interested in joining our merry group of weirdos and getting bonus content for yourself on top of many, many other perks, head to the Linktree link in any of my socials or patreon.com/intothefray. So on this edition of Into the Fray, I welcome on actor, producer, and of course he's an author. He's an author with Beyond the Fray Publishing, George Lunsford. We are going to be covering two of his books. That is Legends, Myths, Monsters, and Ghosts, and the newly, freshly released Monsters of the World reference guide, in which, now this is not just a reference guide, guys. This is also, George got sent some amazing personal encounters exclusive for this book. So that's just a little extra added shout-out bonus on top of what George has produced with the reference guide. Now, George, before we hop into any of these stories that I've chosen, the chapters, what is this whole actor-producer thing? I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I decided I wanted to be an actor about 15, 16 years ago. And I started just doing short films, and I did commercials, I did public service announcements, I did movies, I did a little bit of everything, including the music video for Steep Canyon Rangers.
So what kinds of things would we see you in? Like movies. You mentioned movies. Let's go with that.
Well, most of them are independent horror movies. So there's a movie called The Dead Don't Die, but it was made before the Bill Murray one, like several years before the Bill Murray one.
So
and
is his just a remake of yours in a way, or is it a total rewrite?
it's a different story, but it's not the one we did was the storyline was a lot different, but it has still had the zombies and stuff because that's all that time. That's where that was big was zombies. So I played a character on there that, excuse my language, was kind of a jerk. I got shooting people and all kinds of fun stuff and got ate. So
Oh, well, I guess zombie movie. So you probably saw that one coming, right?
yeah, kind of. It was in the But I waited till the end of the movie before I got it. So you
Oh,
know,
well, that's saying a lot because a lot of people go in that first scene and you're like, well, at least you were in there for a moment, you know?
yep. I did. I was one of the main characters. So
You still working on that kind of stuff?
I thought about going back and doing some. I've got some friends that are still filmmakers, and I might go do some more. I don't know yet. I haven't really decided yet.
Of course, you've been busy writing some pretty dang good books, I'd say. So, there's that too.
I appreciate that. I enjoy writing. I'm kind of an odd duck. I decided I want to be a writer. I started being a writer. I decided I want to be an actor. I was an actor. So it's just one of those things. Kind of a hard headed person.
Yeah, I bet your family's like, well, let's see what George comes up with next.
Yeah, that's pretty much their attitude.
You're entertaining.
I have to say though, making the explosives for the government was the probably the funnest.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'm an active person.
It sounds as such. Yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm working on 5 more books, like a couple movies. No big deal. I just don't sleep. Yeah, I know a few people like that you're just like, when do you sleep? I don't know.
Really don't.
Well, okay, so let's dive in a little bit to this whole paranormal aspect. And, how did you get interested in this, in a quote unquote stranger subjects? It's pretty normal for people like us, but a lot of people go, gosh, that's kind of odd that you like to, you look these things up and you want to write about them. And this is kind of our everyday in a way, right? So, how did you get interested in that? And do you have your own experiences?
Well, I fell in love with the Bigfoot stuff back in what was it, 70s? Was it Legend of Boggy Creek come out? I've just been interested ever since then. And I've had ghost experiences, I've had UFO experiences, but no cryptid experience yet.
So, what about that UFO experience? Is this a light in the sky, or did you see a craft, or is there maybe other things like
Wow.
floating you through walls, or what happened?
Well, I had two UFO experiences. One of them was in the Navy. We was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, nothing around. I'm on aft lookout about 3 o'clock in the morning, somewhere in that area, and we seen something off the port side. Started watching it, and it was this lights, and it was probably the horizon's is approximately 10 miles away. It was probably about 8 miles away, and this thing was moving back and forth. And honestly, when we first seen it, I thought it was a submarine con tower. That's what it looked like. But then I got to watching it and realized that there was nothing under it. This thing was floating above the water, moving back and forth, like it was searching for something. And we watched it for probably 5 minutes. And then suddenly that thing was lit up extremely bright and shot straight up in the air faster than anything I've ever seen. Back then, nobody really talked about that stuff. That was back in the early 80s. So, nobody really talked about it. So we just let it go and didn't think anything else about it.
So, if you thought that was a submarine comms tower, that probably wasn't too far off the surface of the water, really.
No, it was only judging from what I could see. I'm judging it's probably 10, 15 foot off the water. And then me and my wife was coming back from Chicago, and we're up at 30,000 feet, clear, beautiful. You can see the clouds below us. And my wife seen something. She says, "Look, what is that?" We got to look, and it was a silver tube keeping pace with the plane at about 30,000 feet. And it had no tail fin, had no wings, it had no bubble like for the pilot to set in. It was just this long, slender tube. It was, I would say, 10, maybe 10 miles away from us. And she bent down to get something, and that thing lit up and disappeared.
And what time of day was that?
About well, probably late afternoon. It was bright, sunny, and everything.
Was there anybody else on the plane that noticed this out the window?
I'm not sure. I don't know anybody right beside us that did. Everybody was playing with their phones and reading books, all that. So, and I didn't really pay much attention to anybody else anyway. But it was just really strange. That thing popped up there, and we seen it, and then when she bent down to get a picture of it, it disappeared.
How big do you think it was?
It had to be at least the size of the plane. From that distance and that height and everything, it had to be, I mean, because it was keeping pace with us, but there was no contrails from it. There was you could see no tail fins, no wings on nothing.
Yeah, when I hear sightings like that, you kind of go on, because I love when somebody actually sees the craft, you know. I mean, lights in the sky can be cool, don't get me wrong, but to see the actual craft, especially it's got, you can't tell of any means of propulsion, no engines, no fins, no wings. That's a really cool sighting.
It was pretty awesome. I love stuff like that.
Did that freak your wife out at all?
She was more like, I think it's military. She really don't believe in the whole UFO stuff too much. So, but I told her, I said, well, you can't identify it, can you? She said, no. I said, it was flying, right? She goes, yeah. So it was obvious, right? So there you go. There's your UFO.
Yeah.
But, that's okay.
That's
She's
right.
kind of hard-headed too.
You can let her know I'm in that same boat. Most of the stories that I hear, unless there's really something strange attached, I just automatically lean towards military because that they're not telling us even a quarter of the capabilities that they have and the things that they have flying around, and who knows if they're just testing to see if people report it or how they report it, how they react. I don't know, but I'm in her same boat, so I get that.
Well, being that when I was in the military, I knew a lot of stuff that people had no idea what was coming up. So I see y'all's point. I really do. But for me, if it looks like a goose, acts like a goose, and quacks like a goose, it's probably a goose.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever gotten the chance to ask anybody this. Maybe I have, but if you know of things, and I realize, you're under your mouth tied up with duct tape for however long, probably forever. You can't talk about it. But when you know about something coming up, does it kill you a little inside that you can't go home and talk to your wife and say, oh my gosh, you'll never believe what we're working on? Or is it just part of the job, no big deal, you don't think twice about it?
Well, back then, I really didn't even think about it. But I've been out of the military since '89. But I still have contacts. I still talk to people that I knew in the military. They know. They tell me because they know I don't say anything. But there's a lot of stuff out there that people have no clue that some of it, yeah, it is military, but some of it is not.
Yeah, I just hope that when I see the craft, it's like the whole thing. Like they land, the steps come down, like Flight of the Navigator, and then something really weird walks out of there. I just want the whole experience. I don't know about all the flying on the craft and experimentes, but, seeing an alien would be pretty cool.
I want to land in my front yard.
Right? I don't even care if I got a picture for social media. Who cares? I just want to see it and know for myself, right, that we're not alone out there.
And, well, I think for me, instead of being the UFOs and stuff, for me, it would be Bigfoot. I want to get within 10 foot of Bigfoot and look him in the face.
Amen.
I want him to face and make a sound, grunt. I don't care what he does, but I want to see him that close where there's no mistaking what I'm seeing.
Like 10 feet, though. You're good with 10 feet.
I don't care if he gets right up to me. It don't matter. I just want to see him that close. So ghosts. The thing about the ghosts is the ghost never really bothered me because I know there's life after death.
With Bigfoot, I mean, because you do hear of stories that are pretty scary, pretty negative in a way. That's why I was kind of out. I'm like, you sure about the 10-foot rule there, George? But I get it. I do get it because I've heard terrifying story after terrifying story, and they're not all that way, as you well know. But
Right.
I'm still in that camp, just like you. Bigfoot before aliens, always. Bigfoot greater than aliens with the greater than sign. I would love that. I absolutely would love to have that confirmation experience. And as you say, if you're in a car and, you're driving 50 down the road and you could be pretty darn sure, depending on the situation there, that was a Bigfoot. But until you really get that close look, your mind starts to go, you didn't see that. Here's what it really was, and it'll mess with you.
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I want where there's no question at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Go Bigfoot. Team Bigfoot, right, George?
Hey, it's the only cryptid I've ever actually wrote a theory on.
Oh, can I hear that theory?
It's in my book.
Well, let's hear it. Let's spoil it. No, I'm just kidding. If you want to keep that a surprise, we can.
I don't mind. I'll tell everybody. I believe that Bigfoot are actually the giants that were here when the Indians crossed over the bridge, the barrier coming over to the United States. That when they reported, most of the Indian groups reported that there was white giants here or moon-eyed giants. And I believe that's what Bigfoot is. I believe that they killed a bunch of them off, and they pushed the rest of them underground into the big caves, like the Mammoth Cave system. And they just evolved the way they did because of the situation they were in. Like everybody evolves different on your area you live in, what you're offered, what you eat, and everything else. So I think they evolved to be hairier because they grew in the caves and stuff. And there was if you read the stories of the original sightings and stuff of the giants, and then the period when they first talked about Sasquatch or wild man or Bigfoot or whatever, there was about a 500 to 600 year difference in there. They're not talked about at all, and that's enough time for evolution to change the body shape, change more hair, and make increment changes throughout their species. And the fact that I took a Bigfoot casting and went to the Lovelock Caves and used the sandal that they found that belonged to the giants, and the Bigfoot casting fit in it perfectly.
So the question is, George, why isn't your next, I would say, hobby, passion, something that keeps you out of the house and you can't wait to go do it is spelunking? I mean, if they're in the caves and maybe, that's where most of them hang out, why wouldn't they? Especially in hotter climates in the summer. God knows they must be warming all that hair. You got to be getting in some caves.
Well, I think that a lot of them have moved out of the caves and they've moved back into the woods again, and they're more nomad now than they are cave dwellers.
Well, it's good because I was just kidding because nothing good ever happens in caves,
Plus, I'm too old for that.
Listen, I don't care what age you are. Going into caves is just a bad idea. And it's not just because of movies. We've heard of actual, real life, horrible, horrible things that go on in caves. And yeah. And besides that, cave spiders. Forget it. No thanks. All right. Well, let's dive in here, George. We've got first up. Now we're going to start in your book, Legends, Myths, Monsters, and Ghosts here. And we're going to go with a hat trick for each of these books. I picked 3 from each. And we are going to start in the state of South Carolina. And this is The Third-Eyed Man.
Nothing like starting off with a good old mutant.
Heck yeah.
You gotta love it. Well, at least he's picked a good, cool place to be at.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, you get down the catacombs under the University of South Carolina, it's got to be a lot cooler than it is up top. I mean, what can you really say about the third-eyed man? He's got 3 eyes and silver skin. You got to know that there's something in that sewer that's not healthy.
Yeah, and how many times has he been cited?
At least I read at least 4 or 5 times at least that I know of, and it started like way back, way 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 back. It goes back to the Civil War times of the rumors.
And is this just a person that kind of went subterranean and he just kind of couldn't deal with the social aspects of life because he looked different?
Well, there's some different schools of thought on that. There's thoughts that it was like a mutant, a person that was born and had a mutation of the gene, which caused to have the third eye between the other two eyes, almost like a cyclops, but he actually had the regular eyes. There's also thoughts of it being supernatural. There's a lot of different thoughts on it, but I'm still thinking it's a physical creature. It's probably someone that had some physical attributes that people didn't want to look at, and they just retreated down into the catacombs.
That's actually sad to think about, though. I would rather be something paranormal than some poor bloke that just, he's like, I can't deal with the stairs and the Snickers,
Oh yeah, I understand, but you know the the thing is that with the silver skin, the way they talk about the silver skin of the creature, and the way they talk about the eyeball in the middle of his head, right between his eyes, it seems more like something that's actually mutated because they one of the security guards come up on him and he was eating chicken, like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh, I was imagining the whole live chicken situation, but it's like KFC.
Well, that I read two versions of it, but the version that I believe more is that he found the chicken in a dumpster
Right.
and he was leaving bones as he was walking, and that's what the security guard seen was the remains of the chicken, and there he was chowing down.
That's true. I suppose on a college campus, there are far fewer live chickens versus remnants of their leftover KFC. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, especially down in South
Yeah.
Carolina.
Everything's fried. Everything is fried. And God bless everyone there because, yes, everything is better that way. And the third eyed man knows that. Yeah, so that the silver skin does add that layer of the paranormality of it might be a little bit heavier weighted, right? So
That's what I lean towards.
love that one. But this next one, the second I see the word vampire, I'm raising my hand. I'm like, oh, yes, please. So this is, of course, we're going to Louisiana for this. No shocker there. And this is the Vampire Brothers.
You got to give them credit. At least they were fishermen. So, at least they had good taste because, there's nothing better than Gulf seafood. So, and the fact that they're in New Orleans, so that they're kind of have to be vampires. My wife is from New Orleans.
I've actually never been. I badly, badly want to go.
Wait till the crime comes down a little bit, then go. You'll love it. Lots of good food. Now, I wouldn't suggest eating people.
Yeah, that's probably frowned upon. Is that something that the brothers ended up doing then?
Well, they appeared to be normal people. They worked the docks and they did the fish and stuff, but they found a young woman. She was in 1932. She was wandering down the street. I think it was St. Anne Street. And when the authorities found her, she was bleeding real bad. She just looked really rough. And they got to looking at her wrist had been cut, but not cut enough to bleed out fast, just slowly bleed out. Well, she told the story about their names are John and Wayne Carter was the names of the brothers. She accused them. Well, the police, that's really all they needed to hear was about that. So they went to talk to the Carter brothers, and they went home and they got permission to search the property, and they found around 15 more bodies that had been drained with all the blood gone. They had set a trap so they could catch the brothers when they come home. Well, they left four huge, big, strong cops, and the brothers went through them like they were nothing. They were like superhuman strong. And they escaped through the window and they jumped out and they run off and they lost them. But unfortunately, the Carter brothers wasn't real smart and they went back to work and the cops got them at work. and they took and arrested them, tried them, and hung them. Well, they tied them up, they hung them, they buried the bodies. People were freaking out because they were saying they were continuing to see them. So they got an order to dig the brothers up to prove to everybody that they were dead. Well, they dug them up, and they weren't they were not in their coffins.
Now, how long after that? Because I know they had been continually cited after the hanging and all of that, but was there a point when that stopped, or is there still rumors to this day that they are still cited?
There's still rumors. There's a rumor almost every Mardi Gras that they've been seen.
Oh, cool. Now, what are your thoughts on a story like this, George? You know, like the classic vampire story.
Well, vampires, it's an interesting concept about vampires. I have a really hard time believing vampires, and it's kind of weird because I believe most stuff. But vampires they strike me as something that's more of a supernatural thing. They don't seem that they're as physical as what one would think, because they always portray themselves as a human and they're normal, and the next thing you know, they're sucking on somebody's neck or their wrist or whatever. But I don't know that I believe in vampires, although one of my ex-wives was probably a vampire because she was terrible.
She was terrible just in general.
Yeah, she just sucked.
She's an
anyway.
Yep, I know a few of those. But good job, George. I like that one. I like it. No, I'm all about the vampires. I just don't like when they sparkle in the sun. You know, we can leave that alone.
Yeah, I don't believe in the sparkly vampires.
Yeah,
that's ruined vampires out there.
Yeah, don't church it up. Let's leave it like, you know, interview with the vampire style. Don't give me sparkles.
Bram
Stoker.
Bram Stoker was awesome, but I liked what he modeled the vampire after.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta love Vlad the Impaler.
Yes.
I mean, anybody that scares his enemies by invading the village and then packing all their heads, you just gotta like a guy like that. He's got style. I guess I kind of have to believe in vampires. I have to admit, because Elizabeth Bathory was definitely how can I put it about her? She was definitely the consummate vampire.
Well, yeah, all I know is there's a couple of movies that I'll put on in the background because I've seen them a billion times, about a billion at least, is Bram Stoker's Dracula or The Shining, movies like that. I'll every once in a while sit down and watch them start to finish, but it's usually just off in the background. It makes me happy. I've said it before, it's probably pretty demented, but I just like having those kinds of movies on. I don't know. Well, you probably understand that. You like to act in movies like that.
Dude, I actually played a vampire. So, I played ultimate vampire.
George, you suck. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to do the alley oop there. It was right there for me, George. Sorry.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, so I was giving you a hard time earlier about the whole caves and why don't you become a spelunker? But that's only because I am fascinated with anything subterranean, you know, under the earth or wells or caves, anything like that just creeps me out, just 100%, because total darkness, all of that, lots of bad stuff can happen. So that's why when I read this story out of Maine that you found, I had to include it. And I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, but I'm going to try, is the Sabatis Well Descent out of Maine.
Hey, you said it much better than I did.
Oh, you're just being kind.
Oh, no. You got to remember, I'm just an old country boy, so, you know. Well, I have to say, though, it is an interesting well. It's not one that you find every day. You know, these kids, they were goofing off around this farm, and they went around the back of the barn, and boom, there was a cemetery. So they was out looking at the cemetery, doing something I'm sure they wasn't supposed to be doing, and they come across an old well. Well, one of the guys was feeling a little cocky. You know how young guys are, and they were trying to show off with the pretty girls. So he talked his friends into taking a tire, tying a rope to it, and lowering him down into the well. Well, they lowered him and lowered him and lowered him, and he disappeared. They couldn't see him anymore. He was way down in the dark, and they started pulling him back up. And when he got up there, he wasn't the same guy that went down into the well. He come back up. His eyes were huge, like he had seen this the worst thing ever. His skin was pale. He looked older. His hair had turned white, and all he was crying and babbling and laughing insanely all at the same time. His lips were blue. He was trembling all over. Basically, what he said is he's seen hell.
George, what year did that occur?
That happened in like year 2001.
2001. Yeah, that reminds me of well, it just came into my mind because of the the babblings and the eyes and all of that was the short story by Stephen King, The Jaunt. Have you ever read that?
I have not. I have not read
Yeah,
that.
I wasn't having to do with seeing hell as in this encounter, but it was the kind of a similar outcome for someone that did things the wrong way. And yeah, I would imagine if hell was a real place and you got lowered down and got a look at it, you might look similar to that gentleman that came back up.
Well, I know I want to take a GoPro and go over that place and run a GoPro down there with a flashlight.
Yeah, definitely GoPro first.
I'm kind of weird that way.
Oh, it's not weird. What would be weird if you're like, okay, honey, lower me down. I'm going in first. Like, no. Let's hold on now.
Press on that. I don't want to go there.
You're like, listen, I have my limits. Well,
What
that's
I
good.
do.
There is some self-preservation within you then still. That's good.
Yes. Very. It's a bit more now than what used to be.
Yeah, it's funny how it happens, isn't it?
Yeah, when you get older and you got grandkids, you kind of want to hang around a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, I am mortal after all. Dang it. More creaks, more allergies, as we were talking about. I'm like, what is this allergy BS going on? What is this? All right, well,
That's true.
We are switching to your newest released book, and that is titled Monsters of the World Reference Guide. And as I said in the intro, I mean, there is a definite love for Bigfoot in that book because near the latter third of the book, you have, I mean, there's page after page after page of personal encounters that were exclusively sent to you. So that is incredible. So your love for Bigfoot really shines through, but there are many, many other creatures, monsters of the world, as you aptly titled the book throughout. So I did not choose any Bigfoot for this talk, which you might have been like, darn you, Shannon. But there were a few that stuck out because they're unique. So I went to Europe for the first one, and this is the Leshy. This is extremely strange. A feller.
He is, but he's pretty awesome. He really is. He's not entirely bad, and he's not entirely good. That's what I like about it. And he's not like any of the rest of them. He seems to be a deity that watches over the forest. And as long as you're respectful and you're nice and you don't do anything mean, then he won't bother you. He treats you just fine. You just gotta kind of love a guy. He's extremely tall as a tree. He's got blades of grass and everything growing out of his hair, and he's your ultimate tree hugger.
Yeah, and based off his physical description and the fact that he's essentially like an elemental, kind of as you say, this spirit of the woods, it makes you wonder what happens if you make something like that angry, right?
Oh yeah, I mean you're talking about the big tall hoof with pale skin and all that, and he's got the bright. What the thing about him is he's got the bright green eyes, so it kind of makes you go, he may not be too bad. Unless you make him mad. When you make him mad, ooh, bad things happen. He will tickle you to death and eat you. You die laughing.
I don't like tickling, so I think I'd just skip it and go, just get to the latter part. Let's just get this over with. Maybe he knows that a lot of people doesn't like to be tickled. He's like, I know you hate this. Here you go.
I like him because his feet's backwards.
Yeah, so what's the purpose of that, George?
His feet's backwards because then you can't track him because you don't know which way he's going.
That'd be a good trick for Bigfoot to use. Although they don't need a lot of tricks because they're pretty bad to the bone in the woods as it is. But I'm just saying, sometimes, they could do that.
I got a thing about Bigfoot, and I know this is off the subject, but have you ever been into a big wooded area and seen something like a moose or an elk or anything like that?
I saw a horse once, and it was strange because it seemed to just be there, and then it just wasn't. And it boggled my mind, but it was just a perfect lineup of several trees. And, you wouldn't think that would be possible for a huge animal like that, but it is.
Yeah, because I was watching the moose up in Maine. I was watching it, and it stepped into the woods, and it did like 4 steps, and I never did see that moose again. I could hear him moving, but I never could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And with an antler big, you'd think that he'd stand out, but oh no, he just disappeared. And I think that's what this Leshy does too. I think Leshy stays basically hid with his big stump he carries for a club, and he just watches over the woods and protects the animals. He stops the cattle from going into the woods and keeps them out in the grazing area. And the awesome thing about him is that if the farmers anywhere around where Leshy is, they give him tribute. And because they give him tribute, he won't let their animals get lost in the woods.
Yeah, another good reason not to tick him off.
Exactly.
I wonder if that club that he carries is just a petrified human body of someone that did tick him off.
Oh, that'd be awesome if it was.
Imagine the terror. You're like, oh, now you're going to tickle me and eat me. How lovely. At least I won't be one of the clubs.
That's true. At least it's better than the second creature you picked.
Yes. Let's talk about this because there's a lot of prickery, stickery bushes and trees that you just want to avoid. But I don't think they come close to this one. And this one is in South America.
Yes. I'm going to let you say the name because I can't say it.
Yeah, all right. I'll give it a try. Here we go. Okay. If I can do 2 for 2, this is going to be something because I'm constantly butchering. Here we go. I'm going to say Yatavio. That's what I'm going to go with.
I think that's a much better pronunciation than I can do.
What's your pronunciation of it?
That's it.
Okay.
My tongue gets wrapped around the back of my head trying to say this for some reason.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, by the way, I didn't mention this in the beginning to our listeners here, but each of these books, and when I post about these on our socials, how do I word it? You've seen the post. I call them epic because they're large volumes. And there's a lot to each of these books. So the names that were in Monsters of the World, I'm going, oh my goodness, I don't even want, my brain is breaking even trying to say it in my head, let alone let it cross my tongue. Some of the names of these things are out of this world, pun intended, I guess.
Well, I have to blame, now I may get shot for this, but I have to blame my friends over at Drink Beer BS podcast. Those guys are fantastic. And they got my first book and they loved it. They said they was going to use it for a reference for their podcast because there were so many different variations of stuff in there. So in honor of them, I set this book up to be a reference book for people that has podcasts, so that you could find these creatures, get a real basic idea of them. And if you wanted to do more, you could look up and get more information about them. But I did this for all the podcasters out there that does this kind of stuff.
No, they really are both fantastic, essentially reference guides. That's what they are. And everything is laid out as such. It's very easy to find. But that said, me probably butchering whatever the Yatavio or whatever the heck the actual wordage is, me speaking about the other ones that we are not covering on this show, is probably one of those things where you're going, well, I'm going to type this into Google Translate and then hold that up to the microphone and let her say the word, and then I'll just fill in the rest.
You read my mind. That's how I did it.
Oh, really? Yeah, because a lot of those you're going, I have no clue.
There were some of them that were just, for me, I'm an old country boy in the South. So my mouth doesn't work like normal people's, and my mind doesn't work like normal people's. So
Oh, no.
I got to say, though, being, growing up doing farming and stuff, this creature in South America is just awesome because, when you think about a plant that eats meat, you think of a little Venus flytrap that catches flies and closes on them and basically dissolves them. Well, this old boy, he's a little bit more than that. He's like a tree that reaches out, grabs you, and wraps around you and drains you dry.
Yeah, and when did this lovely tree, when was most of its victims, when was all that going down?
Let me see if I can remember. Look, I got the book right here, so I can actually look at this one because I don't remember dates on this one. That was the problem.
Oh yeah, I don't know that there was any, but there was an incredible depiction of Yatavio in your book.
Yeah.
Of young, like young men essentially trying to battle this thing so they're not gonna get eaten.
Yeah, and this thing has giant spines and it's got suctions and barbs and dagger-like teeth and all this other stuff. And it's more spoke about by tribal people down there than it is by anybody else. Not a lot of travelers has ever seen this creature and lived. At least that's from what I've read about it. And the cool thing is that when it gets you, it's usually a traveler. It's not one of the tribal people. They sucker the travelers into going to checking it out, so it eats them instead of the tribe.
Well, yeah, at this point, the tribe's going, well, we know what's over there. Let's send because, I mean, let's face it, a lot of travelers become a pain in the rear to the tribesmen, and that's putting it lightly. So I'm sure they're like, hey, go check out that cool tree over there, man.
Give me a dollar to go check that tree out. Go ahead.
Yeah. You cut a couple sniffs off that thing, you can sell it back home. Yeah, you're going to love it.
You don't cure anything. Trust me. You won't feel any pain when it's done.
It'll be a nice little salve. Oh, wait, you're the salve. Never mind. Just kidding. Yeah.
It's one of the funner creatures I wrote about. I gotta admit.
Yeah, that one was unique. Well, yeah, and there are the illustrations and the different, you got physical depictions of all of these things in the book as well, which is really cool. But yeah, I don't know if that's a rubbing or whatever it is, or just a drawing, but that really stood out. And I'm like, okay, and it eats people. That is a yes, but also a nope at the same time.
From what I read in the picture itself, it was under. I was lucky enough. I looked all my stuff up under public access for the pictures and stuff. And this was actually a depiction that actually came from a book in 1887 called Sea and Land.
Yeah, 1887. I think you're barely past for use, I think, at that point, right? You're like, yes, 1887. It's all about those for use. Yeah. Yeah, you're like, okay, I think I'm clear. No math needed for that one. All right, so last but not least, I chose a very mysterious place that happens to have a number of conspiracy theories attached to it, and that is Antarctica, and this is organism 46B.
Antarctica, while doing this book, was the hardest one to do because nobody lives there. So there's no sightings of creatures. But fortunately for me, there was a Russian science team that was in a station there in Antarctica, and they had used a core driller going down through this glacier, and they found a lake under the glacier. Well, they was going to decided to go investigate it, and that's when they run into this giant 33-foot long 14 tentacled creature living in the lake. But what they didn't know was this creature shot toxins 20 feet out into the water, which would immobilize whatever it wanted to eat. Well, unfortunately for them, it ate some of them. That was bad because it happened in 1974.
Yeah, all I could think of when reading this was, okay, this happened mid 70s. The Thing comes out 1982. I see where this is going.
Well, the bad thing is it happened again. Let's see. If I remember right, it happened in 2016. It disabled their radio and then some of the people.
Oh. Now, this happened 2016 the second time. Are there photos of this thing?
No. They never photographed it from everything. It was such a dangerous character, a dangerous figure, that they basically abandoned the station shortly after that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it just screamed The Thing to me, which I didn't realize this, but because I love the original The Thing, 1982, McGrady and all that. Well, I saw I think it's 2011, The Thing. I think it's on Netflix or whatever it's on right now, if it's still up there. But I'm like, I'm not watching this remake. Like, leave it alone. What the heck are you guys doing? But what I didn't realize is that is a prequel to it's not nearly as good. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to say that. I did. But it is a prequel to the 1982 The Thing. Because, at the end of this movie is the opening to The Thing, which is the husky dog, running away from the men in the helicopter trying to shoot it. And that's when I'm like, oh my good God, it's a prequel. Okay, Shannon, well, good job. You didn't know what the heck you were watching. So yeah, that was, that's why that stood out to me, because that is another one of my favorites, is the 1982, The Thing.
Great movie. Great movie. It's hilarious.
Fantastic. I love the fact that he knew not to use the color red for the blood, right? Like once, I forget the character's name, but it's an incredible scene where his head rips away from his body, right? And then the head's crawling away. He wanted to keep the quote-unquote blood green so that people would keep watching that. And I love that.
I love the older horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bad... Horror movies don't scare me. Because I made movies and I know how everything works. And it really just ruined it for me, because I used to love horror movies. Now it's like, okay.
Well, what kind of scenes would creep you out before you knew?
Really, the one that got me the worst, and you're probably going to laugh at me. I laughed at myself. The movie that scared me the most was a movie called It was just S's across the thing. And basically in the movie, it's got snakes in it. I hate snakes. And the mad scientist is turning the girl's boyfriend into a snake throughout the entire freaking movie. So,
Well,
yeah.
that definitely sounds demented, I'll tell you that. Like the Human Caterpillar, I've never watched it. I don't really want to watch it. It just sounds, dark in a different way,
I tried to watch it. It was so stupid, I couldn't watch it.
I bet.
Human said,
yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I can see the visual here. I know what you're going for. I'm like, I'm all set. I'm going to go watch The Shining again or something,
Yeah, you can't beat The Shining. That's a classic. It's my wife's favorite.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I really can. I can put that on in the background, and I just love that one long drawn out note when he sees the twin girls, or that opening. Bah, 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 everyone knows the opening, but it just makes me happy. I just really enjoy that film, and you cannot beat Jack Nicholson any day of the week. So there's that as well, because he is amazing. Well, George, what are you working on next, sir?
Well, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break because I've got so much work I've avoided doing around the house. I'm remodeling my bathroom, back room, and the hallway. And I've got other stuff to do outside I've got to take care of. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm not real sure. I'm considering doing a sci-fi and consider doing some horror, but I don't know yet. I'm really not stuck on anything. Just got my mind stuck on anything. I got so much running through my head right now. as far as for books and stuff, I could never write all of them. So,
What about no Spelunking 101 with George Lunsford? No?
well, actually, I've been asked to do Legends, Myths, and Monsters the World Edition. That would be, I'd have to break it up into sections because it'd be 2,000 pages or more.
I was going to say that would be the biggest one yet, and these two are large volumes in and of themselves.
Yeah, I'll probably break it up into the continents,
Right.
7 continents, and do it that way because I wanted, if I was going to do that, I'd have to do like the Japanese suicide forest. I'd have to do all that good stuff like that, and the Mexican Doll Island and all that would be in that book.
Romania could have its own thing, since we love the vampires and Vlad.
Vlad's Castle.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something. I just don't know what.
Well, let everybody know socials if you want to give any of those out, and then, of course, where to find the books.
Well, the books are available on Amazon. You can either look them up by my name or by the name of the books themselves, George Lunsford, or you can look them up by Monsters of the World Reference Guide or Legends, Myths, Monsters, and Ghosts, the USA edition. Or you can always find me I'm on, let's see, Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, Tumblr, Twitter. And I've got my podcast going again, Odd and Unusual Tales. I'm on 8 different platforms, so I'm everywhere.
No TikTok yet for you, George? I have a TikTok and I've never used it, and I'm considering using it, and I don't know who I am anymore.
I can't do TikTok, but I have an issue with the fact that that's a data farming site. I have a hard time with that. But I am looking to do a couple of videos for commercials for the books. So if everybody wants to keep an eye out for those, it could happen real soon.
Fantastico. Well, thank you so much, George. It's been a pleasure having you on finally.
I have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.